Hi everybody, welcome to this last session of R for Research. Today we're going to be talking about R Shiny. Without further ado, let's get into our slides. There it is. So as per usual, just a reminder that we have a couple of some Zoom sessions left to do. Well, today already passed, but we have Friday and Monday left. So again, try to do and go over the things that I'm showing you on your own time, and then we can discuss any issues you have on these sessions. Also, as per usual, you're probably all subscribed by now, but remember, if you want to see the following videos coming up, I will be uploading the Zoom videos. So if you want to be reminded when they are uploaded, be notified, just make sure you subscribe to that channel, youtube.com/user/rpsoft, and you will be notified of the newer videos. Just gonna take this off. Right, so what is R Shiny? R Shiny is really just a package which allows us to build dynamic websites very quickly. Hopefully this video is gonna be a lot shorter than the previous ones, I think. Why R Shiny? So it allows us to build quickly applications, which obviously we can use for showcasing our findings and our research, our data models, and whatever we want to showcase in a kind of interactive web form, so that is accessible from everywhere in the world. And the cool thing is that we can build these dynamic applications on top of our R code, so we can reuse all our R code and embed it into these websites. So the sky is the limit, definitely. If just whatever you can imagine, you can build. So how does it work? So there are 3 functions involved in the creation of a Shiny web application. There are 2 main functions, Shiny UI and Shiny Server, and then one function, Shiny App, which really just calls the other 2 to start your application. Let's look a little bit more in detail. So the infrastructure of a Shiny app involves a UI and a server, the UI being the user interface, server being, well, the logic behind the backend, and the user interface would be the front end, another type of vocabulary. In the user interface, you would have all the graphical and kind of interactive elements of your website. So layouts, how's the layout of your elements inside your website. Panels, which is what holds all the other components. Then inputs such as buttons, radio buttons, selectors, whatever. Styles, you can style your elements using, for example, CSS. We will see that a bit later. If you're familiar with web development, you know what I mean. But we'll look at this in a minute. And well, HTML elements, if you can use HTML tags, if you want to call them, HTML tags inside our Shiny application. So if you are familiar with web development, you can really use and exploit your knowledge already. And the server side of things, we have the logic that deals with whatever UI action gets activated is then sent to the server, and the server deals with whatever thing needs to be done and sends a response back to the UI in terms of the logic that's been programmed. It also, well, renders functions, so it renders the elements in the server, and like tables and this kind of stuff that you will render using R, they get rendered in the server, and then you can send those back to the UI for throwing. And you have other things such as reactive functions, database connections, and things like this. We'll explore this in a minute. Will make a lot more sense once we practice it. As usual, I like to point you to the cheat sheets. The cheat sheets are amazing. In this case, I think it's an essential thing to have, because it's impossible to remember all the names of the elements that you can use. and they are very useful to have. Again, cheat sheet with 2 pages, lots of nice elements and things we can use to build our site. So let's get to work. I'm gonna teach you how to build an application, show you what's the minimum elements that you need to know about, how they interact with each other, how to render different components, etc, etc, etc. So let's build our application. Let's go to this. So here we have our usual RStudio interface. Let's build a new document. Let's go into Shiny Web App. It's gonna ask us what's the name of our application here. Let's go with testing or teaching, but teaching application. It doesn't like spaces because this is gonna be the name of our folder. It's teaching app underscore app. Why not? I don't like to put uppercases actually. Let's just leave it at this. Now here you have 2 options, whether you want to have a single file or multiple files. Well, 2 files really, more than multiple files. This refers to keeping the UI and the server together in one single file, or keeping the UI and the server in their own files. It doesn't matter what we do. I think I'm gonna go for single. Maybe it would be easier to see both in one line, hopefully, in one file. Let's create this, but we want to create this in another folder. Let's choose this one, Shiny Tut. I've created that in advance. Open, create this, and this creates this bare bone code that we have here. Again, what I was telling you before. So we have our UI, our server, and then this Shiny app. These 2 things are functions. UI and server are functions, and they are fed into Shiny app here to be executed. Now let's have a look at the UI. Well, actually, let's run this first so you see what this code produces. Run app here, and here we have an example of what minimum application would be. So you have a little slider here. Slider changes its value, which is number of bins, I think. Yeah, well, number of bins, yes. And this in turn gets sent to the server, and the server computes this histogram dynamically and shows it into the interface, into the UI. Fair enough. Let's just change. Let's keep this on the side so we can look at it at the same time. You can see what we do. Right. I can make this a bit smaller. We don't need this. The UI. The UI is made up of different elements. If you go into the cheat sheet, you will see lots of different things you can do with the UI. In this case, we have a title. The title is this, what you see here. This title, this first thing written. Then we have a sidebar layout. Sidebar layout means this. Let's open this again a bit. Let's keep that, and we can just open this one. Sidebar layout is when you have a sidebar on the left here, and then your main space to work with is in the right. There are different layouts. I'm just gonna pick up the cheat sheet. So you have, for example, a split layout where you have just 2 main areas here, or you can have also a flow layout where there are multiple panels, if you will, that react and rearrange whenever we resize the screen. You have fluid rows. We have different things like vertical layouts where all the elements are stacked on top of each other, and we can play a bit with those later. But yeah, just know that many of them exist, and they do their thing. They refer to how the elements are distributed in the interface. Now, inside the sidebar layout, you have two requirements. You have the sidebar panel and the sidebar and the main panel. Again, I was referring to this as the sidebar panel, and this is the main panel. Here we can see how inside the sidebar panel the code has automatically added this slider input, which refers to this slider here. Slider. And then in the main panel we have the plot output, which is plotting something. It's plotting this plot, which now we're gonna see where this comes from. Which in this case is this histogram, no? Right. As I said before, and the UI is connected to the server is connected to the UI. But how does it really connect? It does so by using these labels that we see here. For example, bins. Whenever we change the values of the slider here, this value is associated in a way to this bin label here. And we can access this label from within the server using this variable that we see here. Now we switch to server. We have this input variable. And if we look at where this bin name is being used, we can find it here. So we defined a storage variable called bin that is going to hold the value of the slider input, and we can get access to it from the server by looking at this input variable using the $sign and then the bins word. So now we know how to send values to the server. Now, how do we write something back into the user interface? Well, the idea is similar. So you have your output variable here, and what you do is you store a sub variable, if you will, into this output variable or object. Just give it a name, this plot. We'll talk about this in a minute, but you render the plot into this sub variable, and then we recover this name, this variable, this label on the user interface by using that label, that name, but this time as a string in the user interface. Now it's important to see that we are using this plot output in response to using this render plot. These functions go in pair. Whenever you want to produce a plot, you need to first render the plot in the server, and then you show it, you render it, actually you draw it in the user interface by using this other function. Functions come in pairs, and I'm gonna show you, for example, how to deal with we're gonna add an extra button here, for example. I'm just gonna randomly add a button here. Why not? What should we add? A checkbox. Let me remember how a checkbox goes. Well, I can just choose autocomplete. Checkbox input. So similar to the slider input, what we would have here is we have the suggestions here, no? So the input IDs would be the same as this. We can give it a text to the checkbox input, which would be next to the checkbox. Then we can give it an pre-initialized value, and this I think it just deals with how big you want the checkbox to be. So let's do this. Let's give it an ID. It's gonna be our checkbox, and then we're gonna give it a text. It's click me and a default value false. Why not? So it's gonna start as disabled. Now save, reload the app, and now we see our little button here. We can activate, deactivate, but it doesn't do anything yet, no? So let's do something with it. Why don't we try to print the value of this in the interface? So first we have to go into the server and we have to get access to that variable. We do so by doing input and the name of our thing here, of our checkbox, right? And now we need to draw it somewhere, so we need to have a place in our interface to draw the output. That could be a text output, for example. So let's do it just standard text output. That's one possibility, text output. Now how do we refer to this? Let's call it box value, for example. So we would write into this box value from the server by using this output at not that the box value. And as I said before, these functions come in pairs. So to be able to render text in this text output, you will need the render text function. And what we're going to be feeding into this render text function is the value of the checkbox. So let's copy this and we put it in there. Hopefully this works. Let's save it, reload, and there it is, false. If we click on it, change it to true, true, false, true, false, true, false, true, false. Pretty cool stuff, eh? Now let's keep testing this a bit more. Let's write a table. Let's draw a table here. So table output, and let's give it another name here so we can refer to it. My table. Why not? Can call it anything. Copy this so we can. I don't have to type. I don't like typing. My table, and we store or send to this. You guessed it, render table. And we're just gonna use one of the default tables that are included in R, like cars. I think this is that table. Oop, I just closed it. Cars. Control S to save. Run application. Let's see what it does. There it is. We have a table. Now, what if we wanted to show a different table as a condition? Well, let's do that. Whenever we have false, we show the speed, and whenever we have true, we show the distance, for example. So how do we do that? Let's take the value of input alone. This is going to introduce another new concept. Everything inside R and in Shiny lives into this kind of reactive world. So if you want to use a variable, if you want to store it to be used in these other components, you need to do this. Say you want to store this into X, reactive. You would do this. This creates a. This basically holds a value of our checkbox into this X variable. If you do it this way, we probably just have an error. In order to prevent the error, and behave nicely, make it behave nicely, we do this, put it into this reactive thing. I'm just gonna clear this out so it doesn't look like that it has failed. Oh. Where is our application? Oh, let's stop the whole thing. There it is. Okay. So in order to access variables in a reactive way, which is what Shine is expecting, we have to use this keyword. There are other keywords for different behaviors, but I think maybe we are not going to talk about this just to not make it too complicated today. So now we are able to use this for as a condition, for example. Let's try. I'm not 100% sure that this will work. I mean, I'm improvising here, and I'm not a super expert. But let's try and return something here. So let's do X and cars. Let's return speed, and then cars, return distance. Okay. Now, there is something here that you need to be aware of. X is actually not just a variable, it's actually a function. So whenever it's called after we have to find this reactive thing, you actually need to use this to execute that function. That will actually return then the value true or false from our checkbox. Let's see if this works. It might not work. Save it. There it is. Has done something, but it's not the whole the whole thing, is it? But we are sending this. Let's fix this. I'm just gonna import my library, one of my favorite libraries, deployer, so we can do something fancier. I think it's probably failing because I'm only taking the values here, not taking the actual table column to act as a table. So what we're gonna do is do this select and select speed and do select distance. Maybe this will behave a bit better. Let's reload. There it is. Well, it's not pretty, but it does the job at the moment. So it changes between the two, speed and distance, that are held inside this table, and it does so by reading again the checkbox, which selects the source, no, using this conditional, and whenever it's true, it's gonna show us the speed. Whenever it's false, it's gonna show us the distance. So we already can see how this works, no? So how we obtain this dynamic behavior by connecting the user interface and the server. In terms of, I think this is a very good start. So if you understand what's happening up until now, I think you're ready to go on your own and do whatever you want. Let's work a little bit more with the layout. Just gonna show you a little bit about this. Let's say that we want to add another plot here, for example, and we want them side by side. We can use the split layout. So in here we do a split layout, and inside the split layout we can feed this, and we're gonna feed another function, another plot. Why not? We need to rename this. I'm just gonna call it this plot 2, and we need to write to it in the server. So I'm just gonna reuse this. We're gonna look exactly the same. Maybe I change this. Let's call it yeah, let's do cars here as well, so we have something different. This will take the second column, I think, and it will do its thing. So it looks slightly different. Save it. Let's see what happens if we reload. Let's open, and now see. Now, because we are using the split layout, what is doing? Oop, I'm just gonna close this thing. Getting a bit annoying. Now, because we are using the split layout, it's splitting the space into two, and it's setting one plot in one side, one plot in the other one. You can indefinitely use layouts inside layouts and inside layouts, so you can see how, following this kind of tree structure, you can set whatever kind of layout that you can imagine and set your components there however you want. I think one last element that I'm gonna be talking about today is about publishing. So obviously it's all very well and nice if we can create our applications, but where do we hold them so that other people can see it? So once you have several options, but I think the most straightforward option is to use a service called ShinyApps.io. This is a website. You register to it, and once you have your account, you can set RStudio to automatically publish your applications in this website. I'll show you how it works by publishing this, since we have it. Just press there. Takes a few seconds while it packs the application and while it sends it to the service, and it will then launch. After this, I'm going to show you a little bit about using HTML tags and styles and CSS styles, which I think is quite interesting if you want a bit more customization. But let's wait until this finishes. Let me open the Shiny Apps website as well, so we can talk about it in a minute. Get in there, get in there. If I had proper editing software, I would cut this. But there it is. Cool. So this application is already online, and you could share it with somebody just by copying this URL and sending it. And the other person in anywhere in the world can get access to your application. In fact, if you access this URL during this tutorial, you will see exactly where we left off. Now I'll show you how to use I'll show you this website, the ShinyApps.io. Basically, you would register, sign up. It's free. Login. My account is already created, so I'm gonna log in into mine, and I'm gonna show you just what you need to do. Well, you have here a preview of the applications that are running at the moment. This is the last one, no? Our teaching app is running. I have other two that I was using to refresh my memory of Shiny. But there's just one important thing that I want to talk about, and it's the authentication tokens. You need to do this in advance before being able to click on this button and publish in one go. So what you do is, if you don't have a token here, you will create it by pressing this add token, and once you have it, you go into show here, and you will need to run this command in your RStudio. Obviously this is missing this secret, and you get it by pressing show secret. And I'm just gonna renew my my secret now that I've shown you. But you can copy this, go back to RStudio, go into the terminal, into the console. Let's stop our application. Ctrl V to copy. You register using this this option here, this function. You might need to install this rs connect, which you would do that by doing install packages rs connect. I'm not gonna do it now because it will take a while. But once you have this set up, it's only a matter of pressing this little button. You get this dialog, publish, and it gets sent into shiny apps.io. Right, we can publish, we can build our apps, we can interact with the front end and the back end and all these things. Now let's go a bit more into detail with the styling and elements that you can show in the user interface. So as I said before, you can use HTML tags, and you use that in this way. Let's just add stuff here. You can do tags, $, and these are all HTML components that you can use. Let's do something basic, like using a heading, h1, and what you put inside here is the content of the heading. So you can say something like, I don't know, hello, this is a heading. Save it, Control S. If we run our application, we will see then that heading has been added. Let's go to the bottom, should be somewhere there. It is. That's our heading. This layout is not the best to show that, so let's do something fancier, and let's take a vertical layout here. A vertical layout, which is gonna include this split layout, and I'm gonna take this h1 out of that vertical, sorry, out of that split layout, so that our heading is gonna be shown just under the two plots. No, we have a small issue here. Remember the commas, this needs commas. These are all functions that are being called. They need commas to separate them. Now let's save this. Just trying to arrange this a little bit so it's a bit easier to see and understand. So we have our vertical layout. Inside the vertical layout we have our split layout and tags, and then inside the split layout we have one plot and another plot. Save, run this, see what happens. Probably looks a bit better. There it is. So now it's not bound by the tiny space that we have here. Wow. That's the reactive stuff that are going on. Anyways, now it's all nice to have a black heading, but we might want to do some styling on that. You can do that by using CSS. Now, how do we do that? I would recommend probably adding it at the beginning. So we do a CSS now. So let me check my cheat sheet. Where is the CSS? Oh yeah, we can import it from a file name. That's quite cool. Let's do it this other way. Forgot. CSS. Include CSS. There it is. This is why it's useful to have the the cheat sheet very close. And what this does is to include a CSS file. The CSS is a file called that basically holds the styles of HTML elements. It's called cascading style sheets because it has a cascading behavior, which I'm not gonna get into it. But let's do something. Let's write a file called style.css, and we're gonna import it here at the beginning. Just for readability, you can put it anywhere, but it's gonna affect everything. And let's save this, and now we need to create this file. We might very well get an error if we don't create the file. Save this into our teaching app. It's called this style.css. Save it, and this is gonna be very cool. So let's modify the color, for example, of this heading, and we do that by using this lovely CSX syntax. So h1 is the name of the element. You see it, where did I put it? There. And name of the element, h1. We open curly braces, and we are gonna use the command color, and it's gonna do it into a red. Into a red heading. Run the application, and we saw it briefly there. There it is. That's a red thing. So the CSS language has a lot of instructions, lots of things you can do. I'm gonna point you to this resource here. It's a resource to learn a bit of web development, but if you're interested in extending your knowledge of CSS, you can go through this element and learn a little bit of web development, which is always nice. But the way you use CSS within Shiny apps is this way. I guess recommended way to do it. And let's do something else. I love working with CSS, so let's do this. This is a subclass which tells well, modifier. I don't know if it's a class. It's a modifier of this h1, which tells whenever the mouse goes over this element, h1 element, to apply those styles that you're gonna define inside. So let's do color blue whenever our mouse goes over that heading. So let's save. It shouldn't do anything yet because we need to refresh, reload, and we close the app. Let's close the app. Sometimes if it doesn't work the first time, close the app entirely and save. There it is. I don't know why it doesn't take it on the fly, but well, if it doesn't work, close the thing entirely and rerun. Cool. What if we want to make it so that it looks like it's clickable? You could do here cursor is a pointer whenever the mouse goes over the h1. Well, yeah, whenever. It's always gonna be like this. You can put it on over here as well, but it's just a generic case. Is always related to h1. Reload. Well, let's close it. Run it again. And now we'll see that the mouse cursor changes to the little hand, which is the pointer. So I think that would be about it for today in terms of this. So you know how to publish, you know how to style, you know how to add different elements. I guess I'll show you one last. I'm just gonna show you one last element. It's a select box. A select input. This is a very important input. Let's call it select box. So you can see here the options that's required. No, so you have an input ID, a label, and the choices. Those three things are necessary. Then the other things are optional. So let's do my select, just to call it something. Select something here. Select something, and these are the options. It could be, I don't know. I'm just gonna put names of numbers. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, that is. Command N. And now if we refresh this, we have a little selector, which is always cool. And now we want to do something with this, so why don't we show it into a text output. I'm just gonna put it right under text output and our checkbox value. This doesn't necessarily have to have this underscore value thing. You can write whatever you want. It's just to differentiate our checkbox from the checkbox text output thing here that we're gonna use to show its output, its value. And so we have this. Let's go down and let's do similar to what we did with the box value. In fact, I'm just gonna take this. I'm gonna substitute that, and I'm gonna substitute that. Our checkbox. No, sorry, we don't need the checkbox. Sorry, it was the select. I'm losing it a little bit. Where is our select? Oh, there. My select value. Sorry about my mistake there. My select value, my select, here. So we take the value from my select and we render it as a text, and it's sent then to the text output, which has this name, that has that name, my select underscore value. There it is. So let's save it, reload, and we see our text value is 1 because we have here selected 1. We can click and change to the different values, and it's being shown here on the fly. Another cool element. And they pretty much work all the same, so if you need a radio button or anything else, they work very similar, in a similar fashion. If you have any doubts, just ask me and I can clarify if you have any doubts with particular elements. And on that note, let's stop here. I think it's quite straightforward, but again, just ask me if you have any doubts. Let's go back to the slides. So the last page here. Okay, again, thanks for joining me today with this. I hope you have enjoyed the course so far. I know it's a lot to take in, there's a lot of different technologies and a lot of commands, but I hope that it was useful. If you have any doubts or you would like to ask me anything, again, you have different ways to do so. You can send me an email, or you can join us for the remaining Zoom sessions. We have one tomorrow from 3 to 5, or Monday from 3 to 5 again. There is a bit more time to work on, to make me maybe do a wrap-up session. If you have further doubts, think about it. But yeah, you can help me to do that. If you want to direct the last session, tell me if you have any doubts. Maybe you like me to go deeper in any of the issues that I have shown. I don't know, really it's up to you. So again, contact me through email, even the comments in YouTube, or join us for the Zoom sessions. I will be uploading the Zoom sessions that we have had so far. They're quite short. So yeah, that hopefully that is useful too. Well, I stop rambling and thank you very much for joining again, and see you in the next session, if not in the next Zoom tutorials. Thank you very much. Bye bye.